Have you ever walked past this building in Elizabeth Street, Hobart, and wondered what it was? It now houses offices, but it was originally built as the home for a very successful mover and shaker in colonial Van Diemen's Land. A man who made a lot of money and ensured that a lot of that money went towards helping those less fortunate than himself. As you can see, the house was and still is called Westella, and it was the home of the colourful and quirky Henry Hopkins. Just south of London in 1787, Henry Hopkins was born in the Thameside area known as Deptford. But it was on the other side of the globe that Henry would go on to make his mark. Henry arrived in Hobart Town in 1822 and soon established himself as a merchant of note and a shrewd businessman. But he was also a man of strong religious principles and convictions. As a member of the Congregationalist Church, Henry believed that it was his duty to spread his wealth around, that his money should not just be set towards financial rewards and material possessions, but benefiting the poor. With this in mind, Henry set about building many schools and buildings for the poor. Henry felt that if the poor were given a basic education and the opportunity to better their lot in life, they might still be poor, but they'd be much less likely to murder their betters in their beds. We're now down in Collins Street in Hobart, in the heart of what was the old Wapping district. For over 100 years, this was the home of the dirt poor, ne'er-do-wells, villains, whores, actors. Its proximity to the Hunter Street Old Wharf area of Hobart Town meant there were a lot of sailors gathering in this region as well. It wasn't a great place to be, but to Henry Hopkins, it was prime real estate for saving the souls of the poor and educating their minds. Around the corner, they built a small and simple church. But just over here, there's a small clue to another one of his endeavours. Have you ever noticed this little laneway here? This is Ragged Lane, and its name gives us a gentle hint as to what took place here in years gone by. Remember that this used to be the heart of the Wapping slum, and for years the old Hobart Town rivulet used to run just where Collins Street is today. What was originally a pristine stream by the 1830s was little more than a sewer, which kept regularly overflowing and flooding the poor inhabitants of Wapping. Remember, these people were the poorest of the poor, and Henry Hopkins deemed them to be the most deserving. So it was into the middle of all this that Henry built something for the children of the poor. He built a little school, a ragged school for ragged children. Ragged schools were charitable institutions where children were given a rudimentary education and some basic nutrition. Their spiritual needs were catered for as well as their physical needs. The children were trained up to be kitchen maids, grooms boys, shop girls for a life of service. But Henry again deemed that this would be enough to help them have a step up to becoming useful members of society. Henry's ragged school stood at the end of the lane until 1916, at which point it was demolished in the clearance of the Wapping slums and the diversion of the Hobart Town rivulet. Henry continued his community endeavours right up until his death in September 1870. This commemorative stone in the Congregational Church next door to Westella was laid by Henry only a few weeks before his death. We're now down on the Hobart waterfront. Where we are on Hunter Street, we walk in the very footsteps of Henry Hopkins. As a merchant of note, Henry would have walked past these very buildings many times, coming down to meet different ships as they came in. Hunter Street is where we also find the Mach 1 Hotel. Mach 1 Hotel has 114 rooms, and every one of those rooms has the story of a Tasmanian character. It's no surprise that one of those characters is Henry Hopkins. And here he is, the colourful and quirky Henry Hopkins. You know, there are so many stories around Tasmania. Even though sometimes the subject may no longer be with us, there are still lots of little clues around everywhere you look that tell parts of their story. This is Tasmania. Scratch the surface and you'll find a story.